I'm sure a lot of people know about human design. So I'm a projector, right? And in human design, being a projector, one of the things that's beautiful is like I see people. I really see them. And so there have definitely been clients who come to me in a story that isn't true.
Yeah.
And I'm able to ask them questions and have them maybe look at things differently because of like a story. It's not even like that they know that they're lying to themselves sometimes. It's just literally a story or something that they've been telling themselves for so long. And I think like my truest gift is that I truly see people and I see like the essence of who they are, and I'm able to voice it to them or ask them questions in a way that allows them this new perspective. And that's how we kind of leave that like other story or that lie or that like little kind of change so that they actually can show up for who they are.
Hey, this is Chad Namiro.
And I'm Kelly Namiro. Welcome to the Balancing Chaos podcast,
A lifestyle podcast where we will interview guests about wellness, business, and just about everything in between.
Our goal is to help you develop a lifestyle that promotes health, wholeness, and success. Through our conversations, we hope to inspire you to live a beautiful, full, and joyful life as you navigate balancing the chaos.
We hope you enjoy.
I am so excited about this episode today with my coach, Jamie Graber. She has literally changed my life in so many ways and truly been a catalyst for so much change, both within me, within my business, in my personal life, in my relationships, in my spiritual practice, and beyond. And I can honestly tell you that I'm like going to start crying right now. I am a better human being because of Jamie and the way that she works with me. For so many years, I had searched for a therapist in Las Vegas online who I could feel like comfortable with. And I constantly left all of these different people feeling like I didn't have any tangible tools. I didn't have any action steps to move me forward. And then I found Jamie, and I know that she is not a therapist, but she is a coach, and she is incredible because she actually gives you the tools to change your life. And every time I leave a session with her, I leave feeling uplifted. My perspective is shifted. I am so much clearer on what the next steps need to be. So Jamie is, like I said, a coach. She's a mind shifter. She moves energy. She teaches meditation. She's a speaker. She does so many different things. And for her entire career, she's really been seeking to find and understand her truest self and how to become the best version of herself so that she can help other people to do the same. So welcome to the show, Miss Jamie.
Thank you for being here. I have to say, wow. I love what you had to say. Thank you.
Seriously, it's all true.
And I have to say, like, part of it is I think that, people find like the right coach when they're ready to do the things.
Yeah.
And while I'm not a therapist, I'm definitely someone who does a lot of talk, and we talk and like we get to know each other, but ultimately it all depends, like how much transformation someone has really depends so much on how they're willing to show up for themselves, whether it be in the honest conversations. Like part of why we do such great work together is because you're super honest during our conversations, and you don't tell me what you think I want to hear. You tell me like what's actually happening for you, and then you're willing to take steps and do things that actually change things. And so I think that like it's so important to know that like whoever you're seeing, whether it's me or any other coach, like so much of it also has to do with what the person is willing to do.
To share. That's a really good point, because I think that I went to therapy for years back when I was dealing with my eating disorder, and I lied to people about like what I was doing and what I was ready for and like all of that stuff.
Do you find that often with the people you coach?
Yeah, so
kind of a misguided sense of themselves.
Yeah, and so I think like one of the things, so like everyone, I'm sure a lot of people know about human design. So I'm a projector, right? And in human design, being a projector, one of the things that's beautiful is like I see people. I really see them. And so there have definitely been clients who come to me in a story that isn't true.
Yeah.
And I'm able to ask them questions and have them maybe look at things differently because of like a story. It's not even like that they know that they're lying to themselves sometimes. It's just literally a story or something that they've been telling themselves for so long. And I think like my truest gift is that I truly see people and I see like the essence of who they are, and I'm able to voice it to them or ask them questions in a way that allows them this new perspective. And that's how we kind of leave that like other story or that lie or that like little kind of change so that they actually can show up for who they are, if that makes sense.
Just like tell us quickly about the human design. I'm not familiar. Is it like personality archetypes?
Yeah, I'm not a human design. I mean, I've done trainings, but I'm definitely not the person to go to for human design. But it's basically like how it's a system that's based on a few different things. One of them being astrology, one of them being the chakras, Kabbalah, depending on what other people say, it could be the Myers-Briggs. But it's basically how you operate in the world most efficiently is kind of how I think of it. And so just a projector is someone who sees
people for who they
that's
truly
your
are.
gift, is that you truly see them and you know how to like guide them and motivate them and do all that. And so I think that you're able to pull people's truths out even when they're not planning on telling you them. If that
I was actually like one of my first questions that I had like written out because I don't want to like put this on you, but like I do think what, like I've said multiple times already, is what you do is more powerful than therapy. And I was going to ask you why you think that. And it is, I think it's truly a gift that you have. One, that you can see people, but two, you make people feel safe. And also at the same time, don't allow their own like excuses and bullshit to like get in the way. Cause like, I cannot tell you how many people, when I first started like looking for a coach, even just for my business, I'd be like, oh, well, I can't do that because X, Y, and Z, and you're like, yes, you can. Like, stop saying that. Like, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that like one of the things that's really hard is that also like we're in this world right now that also people are a little bit, this might come off wrong, but soft. And people don't like that tough love. And people will talk to me and say that I'm tough love. I'm like, and I find myself incredibly loving because like the toughness that comes is me just wanting you to be you, right? And me wanting you to see that like things are possible for you. And it might be a little bit more difficult, but I said this, I was recently talking about this, I think even on like Instagram, it's like, everyone wants everything to be an F yes for them, right? And they want to believe that we're being told this narrative right now, like everything should feel amazing and everything should feel good. And this other person I was listening to was talking about how if it doesn't feel good in everything that you're doing for your job that you're trying to create for yourself, if everything about it doesn't feel good, maybe it's the wrong thing that you're doing. And it's like, whoa, whoa. Like that is so not true, because with everything that we're doing, there are things, especially if we're on our edge, it means that there's going to be discomfort that's going to consistently come up for us every time we're going. And so if your fear voice is louder than your trust voice, then every time that fear voice comes up because you're on this edge, you're not going to want to do it. You're going to have resistance to it.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you're listening to the idea of like, oh, well, it doesn't feel like an FES in everything in my body, then you're going to stop every time that happens. And when you're on your edge, if you're really doing things right, you should fail. You should fail a bunch of things. You should do things that you think are going to be successful and they don't always happen. Right. But that in that failure, of that temporary failure, comes a success after that. Right. Or maybe 2 times after that. And I think that with that tough love sort of approach I have is that I don't let you give up. I don't let you believe that this discomfort is the thing that means that like you're not ready to do it. I think it's that you then have to do some earthly actions, right? And you have to take some steps that might feel uncomfortable in order to step into that new you. And therefore they might not feel like an FES, but ultimately that thing that you want is the FES.
Yeah.
Right.
So talk to us, because I think that for someone like me and you, and I want you to go through the back history of your story. Like you used to own a raw vegan restaurant and then you transitioned to being this coach. And I kind of look at our stories as like a little bit parallel to where like I was running this fashion company with my sister and then it transitioned into me like being this coach. And it was all kind of not effortless. That's not the right word, but it was very like, okay, the coaching thing feels really right. And so I'm moving towards that. But there are people out there who are like, I don't know what the fuck feels right. Like, I don't know what I'm passionate about. I have no idea. And so where did those people even start?
So those are 2 questions, right? So so you might have to remind me of the second one.
I will.
I answer the first one. So the first thing is like, so the story of, and I think when we look in hindsight and we say like, it was so effortless, right? So I had a raw vegan restaurant in Manhattan. And for me, what wound up happening was I was constantly talking to the clients and always like coaching them basically when I was there, as opposed to, I wasn't the person in the kitchen making the food. I was very much front of the house, hanging out with everyone. And I started to get clients just when I was there through that, right? And then the restaurant business was making me pretty miserable. And I realized that, and I spoke to a coach who was super helpful, who basically offered me the question. She's a projector as well. And so she very much saw me, and she said, what if Ginger Snaps wasn't it? And in that question, I was like, first, I was like, screw you. And then after sleeping on it, I was like, oh my God, it's really not it. And within 6 weeks, I had ended my lease, gotten out of it, and started this business. And so in hindsight, I can say everything was effortless. But if I'm really going to go back to it, I would say to you, like, no, there was lots of really scary moments. Right?
Oh yeah.
There were moments when like I had to like put my offering out there. There were moments when I had to send my newsletter to people and like hope that someone would want to sign up with me. When I did my first group coaching, hoping that people would sign up, right? And so like, it's effortless because I'm looking back now and I'm seeing like all the success that happened, right? But really, there were moments of incredible discomfort. There were moments I had to take chances. There were moments that my first group coaching, it was like, I think like 8 people happened, and like, that was amazing. We were super happy for that, but it was like 8 people, it's in person in my house, and I almost lit my entire apartment on fire because we did a full moon thing. And we lit all of our like things that we were releasing, and I literally had a flame hit to the ceiling of my room. And I did it twice, like without even learning the lesson. But meaning like that originally, like I probably wanted 20 people in that first one, right? But it was 8, right? And so like when I was launching it, like it was scary and it felt like really uncomfortable, right? But then I just kept on going. And I think that like, that's one of the things that people don't realize is that we can look back on things and say like, you know, I always talk about a big part of what I teach is the subconscious mind, because we can't change things on just a conscious level because we're not conscious beings, right? Most of our actions, 90% of our actions are going to be led from the subconscious mind, which is why I think that in that earlier thing about like why I'm different, I think, than a therapist is that we start with a cognitive conversation, but we have to make the change on a subconscious level in order for things to be different. And so in that, there's always homework that you have, there's meditations, and like in conversations that you have, like with me and with my clients, it's like, you can't process everything. Nobody can process everything in one conversation because there's so many different things that are happening, and you're having all different thoughts about what you're listening to your therapist say or your coach say. And you're having different thoughts, and they're often contradictory. And so what happens with us, right, is that you have homework, which is going to be meditation-based and subconscious mind-based, where every time you sit down with that, your subconscious mind can't help but think, where did I learn this meditation? Who taught this to me? What is it about? What conversations do I have with that person? What am I working on with that person, right? And so what happens is that it's able to actually penetrate so much deeper than just a cognitive conversation, because you're visiting it and reprocessing it all the time until you meet back up again. And what that conversation was at the beginning, and then what it looks like later on, 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, or 4 weeks later, is completely different because you keep on reprocessing it, because we always are having conflicting thoughts at the same time, right? And so it's like, I can be like, oh my, like it was effortless for me to become a coach. And I can really feel that. And at the same time, I'm like, oh, but there actually were really hard times too. Both are true, right? And I think that that's part of what makes the difference when you're working with someone that's helping you work on 2 different levels, I would say. Yeah. And then the thing about like knowing, you know, what you want to do, like, again, for me, like I was a philosophy major. So like my life has been spent trying to figure out how this thing works. So it totally makes sense.
She's pointing to her brain, right? By the way.
Yeah. What'd you say?
I said, you're pointing to your brain, just so everybody knows who's not watching video.
Exactly. And so like, basically though, for me, it's like, I had all these jobs. I worked in fashion. I worked on music videos and commercials, and all of those made sense. And all of those were actually very much part of why I'm so good at what I do today. And so when people are looking for their passion and people are trying to understand, I think that ultimately that thing that you're here to do, there's going to be a list of jobs that happen before that, that actually are very much important and imperative to that version of you that you become. The same way that the person, like, all the people who broke your heart, all the people whose heart you broke, all the bad relationships you had are absolutely why you wind up with your person, right? When you find them, and they make that relationship that much better, that much more growth. And so I think people have to understand that like if when you don't know what your passion is and you're trying to figure it out, one of the things you want to look at is like, what are the things that are lighting you up in even the jobs that you're doing right now? Chad, me and you once had a conversation about this, right? And it was like, there were things that we were talking about in the entrepreneurial, I'm not going to go too much into it, but it's like, there are things that you can look at where like someone might have this, like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I really want to go after this thing in this certain way. But they're also someone who's corporate. And there are ways that you can infuse like what that entrepreneurial thing looks like in a corporate job where you actually have a boss and you're not your own. Right. And there's a way that a lot of people want to be in wellness, and they think that being in wellness means that like every day you're just talking about wellness and like there's nothing that you have to do that's like administrative or nothing that you can do that you don't want to do. And that's just not true. Like I love my job. I love my job. I'm absolutely sure that I'm here to do what I'm doing. And there are some days where I don't want to get on a call. Right. And there are some days where like, I don't want to go and email someone. Like there are days where like, I don't want to do the thing. And that's totally normal. But I think it's important for us to remember that if I look back through all of my jobs, right, in my past, I can see that like the connecting with people, the finding solutions, right? I was in production for so long, which is why my brain is so wired to help see solutions and things. And I think that all of that is part of why I'm so good at what I do right now. So if someone isn't sure what their passion is, first of all, not everyone has to find their passion in their job. And I think that that's okay. And I think that for some people, it is not going to be that. And it doesn't mean that they don't live as passion-filled life as someone else. It might mean that their passion is someplace else. It might mean that their job affords them the ability to have free time off. They have a job that they don't have to take their work home with them. They have a job that pays them a certain amount, which then gives them the freedom to do the things that they want to do. And so I think that people are being sold that everyone should like wake up in this idea that their job is answering everything they want in life. And I just don't think that that's true. I think it can be part of it. And for some people, it might be it, but that's not for everyone, and that's okay. And so for the people who that's not for, you do want to look in your job of things that you do love, and you want to pay attention to those, as opposed to getting in this rut of paying attention to all the things that you don't like.
Right. It is. And that's where it comes back to that perspective on things. So I think that was a really well said answer.
Right. And that's not to say that someone can't change their mind if you're miserable in your job. But I think when you're looking for that next job, it's like, well, where am I good? Like, what do I really excel at my job right now? These like the actual task itself, the skill itself, like, what is it? Like, so for me, I was making people, almond milk coffees. Like, that's what I was doing. I was making them a juice and a smoothie, but I was talking to them.
Yeah.
Right. And I was connecting, and they were coming in not just for the juice.
Yeah.
They were coming in because they wanted me to help them feel better.
Yeah.
And so from that, it became an easy segue for me to understand, okay, from that job, it's not that I want to open up a different restaurant. It's not that I want to open up something different. It's like, what I loved about this job was the talking to people and making their life better. And so then I also got more skilled. One of the other things is this idea that people don't always love to hear. And this is like a little nuance, but it's like, not everyone's going to be the best coach. Like, you have to take trainings, right? Like for you, like in all the hormone, I could never do what you do, all the hormone stuff that you know, right? Yeah. And so it's not like everyone gets to be a hormone coach, like because they want to, because they went through something. No, They also have to have an education. They have to know something about it and have like skill at it. And so it's like, if you want to be a health coach, or if you want to be a regular coach, or if you want to be anything, one of the things you want to think about while you're in that other job is, what skills would I need to be really good at that? And let me, while I'm doing this, start to learn more about that, start to become better at that.
I remember a time in my life when springtime would hit, and immediately I would be searching for a new trainer or Googling all of the 7-day juice cleanse, 14-day detoxes so that I could get myself in shape for summer. And what I didn't realize at this time was that all of that was a complete waste of my time, of my energy, of my resources. And I look back on that just wishing for those hours and all of that energy and brain power back. the decisions that I was making for my body were coming from a place of punishment rather than from a place of love. And it wasn't until I started meditating and I started doing the work, the real work on myself, that I recognized that I needed to nourish my body with both movement and food and mindset work if I ever wanted my body to love me back in a sustainable way. And that's why the WBK membership, that I release meditations where I deeply connect you with yourself, and blood sugar balancing recipes to nourish you on a cellular level, and low impact movement to support the delicate balance of your hormones, really gets you the results that you're looking for, where it starts to become a lifestyle. It starts to become who you are. I can tell you firsthand that both myself and my members, my private clients, all of us have seen the most incredible results from the WBK method. It's so different than your typical diet and a restrictive approach that we're taught from diet culture from a very early age. As a 33-year-old mom of two, this is the leanest I've ever been, the most energy that I've ever had, and the best that I have ever felt in my freaking body. And it can be that way for you too. So right now, with the code Balancing Chaos, all one word, BALANCINGCHAOS, you can get 10% off your annual membership for the WBK method and get new weekly content, plus a library of hundreds of workouts, recipes, meditations, with a 7-day reset and a 30-day challenge, all to get you started. So use the code Balancing Chaos, again, all one word, to start your 7-day free trial and see, when you love your body back, how your body starts to love you.
So speaking of that, and like saying like you're recognizing, you know, when you were in your shop, you notice like, I like talking to people and I like helping people. And like, that was kind of like what snowballed and turned into your coaching business. The same was really true for me when I was transitioning this whole fashion career that I had with my sister into Wellness by Kelly, because we had an Instagram together. My sister like didn't really like sharing on the Instagram, which is like so awesome, because now for her, it's so true. It's like, she really likes to keep her personal life personal. And like, it made sense that she, you know, was like, so like wanting to be so private, and then like finally made that transition. And then for me, like, I liked to share what was going on with me and my hormones. And like, after I had to just like recovered from this eating disorder, and I was talking about that a lot online, and she would say to me all the time, like, this doesn't resonate at all with what we're trying to sell. And I'm like, but people like it. Like people are engaging with me. But at the same time too.
And more importantly, actually, wait, what I would say to that too is like, more importantly, you liked it.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved it. It lit me up. I got excited about it. And what I had put, I'm actually looking at my vision board from this year right now. What I put on my vision board for that year in 2020, right before I had my son West, was like that I wanted a wellness thing. But like, I couldn't envision how that was going to happen. I couldn't see, like, I was so stuck in this thing with my sister, and I didn't want to hurt her feelings, and I didn't want to tell her, but I wanted this wellness thing to like evolve somehow. And what had happened was literally like 5 months later in May, she came to me and was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, oh my God, thank God, because I don't want to do this anymore. And you telling me that like literally feels like it saved me from having to like hurt your feelings. And now I can go and do the action steps and take the knowledge that I learned, you know, going back to get a certification, multiple certifications, and like use them versus like feeling like I'm going to let you down by saying that I quit. So I was like, it all happened in the best way. But for like those 5 months, I felt like I was in this place of like wanting to control it and trying to figure out how to control it. And it was one of those things that really taught me that I had to trust and surrender more. And so can you talk, and that's something I still to this day work through. I think a lot of women, I mean, maybe men too, you tell me, are really working on trying to be less controlling.
What I will always say is that we have to remember that like there is, whether you call it God or universe or spirit, whatever it is, there's something outside of us. Like,
Yeah.
and most people, even if like they're highly religious, right? And I don't speak that language, we could probably agree on something that there might be something out there that's a little bit different, right? That's
Right.
helping us in some way. And I think that the ultimate balance is you taking steps and then surrendering to the outcome, right? Surrendering to thinking that it needs to be, you brought up vision boards, right? And I teach a lot about manifestation. And I think like one of the things that I find interesting is that people want to have this, like, very often when you're in a place of fear, you're having a lot more control, right? You're wanting to control stuff much more because you don't feel safe. And so that's why we create control, because we think that then we have more ability to control the outcome of the thing that's happening. That's when you know that you're in a fear-based place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, when we're trying to figure out something that we want or that we desire, if we hold on to and get really attached to the outcome of what it is, then it means that we're forgetting that there's something bigger out there. It means that we're also forgetting that there can be a bigger possibility out there than we've ever thought.
Yeah.
Right. And we don't leave room for that. And so I think one of the things is that you have this thing where you're like, okay, like I really want wellness. I want to do something in wellness. I know I want to. I know that I've had eating issues, and I know that when I speak about it and I feel that other people are helped by it, so there's a sense of service that I really enjoy as part of it, it feels really good, right? And I want to do this more, right? The controlling thing would be like, and it has to look exactly like this, right? It means I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing this, and it must, and the outcome is that I have X, Y, and Z. Right? Mm-hmm. When you're doing it in a place of surrender and faith, what you're doing is like, I want to be in wellness. Okay, well, what does that mean to me? When I say like I want to be in wellness, I'm going to attach it to a certain type of feeling, right, that I hold. And that is feeling like I'm helpful, feeling like I can be of purpose, feeling like also the things I'm looking in and studying give me more knowledge about the things that I'm actually curious about. Right. Like I study the mind like there's no tomorrow. I love it. Some other people would find that very boring, so it probably wouldn't be a good thing. What I do would be good for them, right? But it's what I enjoy, so I know that it's in line with me. Like me learning more about the thing that I'm an expert in helps me to know that I'm on the right path. But if I attach it to the outcome must look like this, then then I wind up thinking that my success is based on an outcome, right? Mm-hmm. And it means that everything that I do, I don't become happy until. I don't think I'm successful until, right? And when we have more of a surrender and a faith, then you're holding on more to a feeling of like, for you, what it would mean to be in wellness, what that felt like for you. When you look at your vision board from 2020 and you see this wellness idea, it winds up creating a feeling for you, and possibly, depending on the way your mind works, a vision, right? And so if every day you spend time and space with that vision, right? And you sit down and then you ask, like, let me be led to the right actions. You start taking actions that feel much more free, that feel much more aligned, and you allow them to take you where it might be, as opposed to saying it must look directly like that. So someone might have a business that they want to do in wellness, but they wind up like thinking that they want to be talking about the mind, but they wind up realizing that hormones are much more important to them. Or they think that they want to be a one-on-one coach, but they realize actually they're much better in group, or vice versa, or anything like that. And I think that like ultimately it's not being attached to the details of exactly what you think it is. I talk about this when it comes to love as well, right? So it's like people make these lists, like I want this guy to have this, 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 and this, right? Or this woman or whatever. And like, I think about my list when I made it, and a lot of the stuff on there, Will, my husband, like would not have on that list, but they were really stupid things. And it was back when I was very much in the height of my disordered eating, like very, very much so still. And so in that, I was making this list of what I thought I wanted from a very wounded state, from a state that didn't believe in the possibility of what I really could have and what I really could find. And I think that when we're manifesting, and it could be a career right too, it's like, depending on where we are is often what we can see. And so when you surrender, you allow an even bigger possibility to be there for you, because you're not tied to it being this one thing. Because when we tie it to this one thing, you wind up feeling really, really constricted. And the idea, I think, is that you use this idea of this vision of like wellness and what it looks like for you, again, as that example, and you have it almost be like a direction. Right? And so it's like you're on a map and it's showing you that like you can go in this direction. But as you're going in that direction, if you're really allowing yourself to be in like full alignment, you might notice that you go and you teeter off. Right? So I have my Google Maps going to this one store. But as I'm going along that way, I actually see there's another store that I never even noticed before. Right? But I just came to it because this original path that I was going towards actually passes this one thing. And I go in there, I'm like, oh, I actually love this so much more. This is so beautiful what they're selling. I don't even need to go there because I found it there. But if I'm so incredibly held on to being at that store, I can miss all these other opportunities of stores that I can go to along the way. Does that help? Because I kind of just made that up on the spot, like how I'm trying to do that analogy.
No.
But
No, it's so
this
true.
idea that like there's all, when we can use the goal and the thing that we want as a far off directional thing to get us in movement, to get us in motion. Because one thing that anyone who creates a life that they love will have in, that they'll all have, is that they'll be in movement. They're constantly taking steps. They're constantly in their life and actively making choices in their life. But new opportunities come in front of them all the time. Part of why we talk about meditation all the time is that so you can like open up your mind so you can see so much more than what's just in front of you.
Right.
So if I am walking and to that place that I want to go to, and I refuse to see anything that's on the side, I'm missing all these other possibilities, right? And all these other things that could be very much better than the thing that I thought. Now you just have to make sure you're being super conscious, which is why a daily meditation practice is always going to be part of it, right? So you can really be clear and make sure that the reason why I'm going here isn't because I'm scared I can't get there, right? Then we know, no, I don't actually want to go there. I need to keep going this way, right? And that's always a revisiting and a re-asking yourself that question along your path to know, like, am I teetering off to the right because that's actually something that's really beautiful and aligned for me, or am I scared? And that's something that I think that's part of why working with a coach is so powerful, because they help you be much more conscious and intentional with your choices
you're making,
so that it doesn't just kind of, you don't take control over it.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, I'll give a little anecdote of like what that means to me. You know, I have been on this path of being a coach now for 3 years. And I kind of like thought to myself when I started it, that was the way that it was always going to look. And now there have been seeds that have been planted for like something else that I want to do, and like something that's like more tangible and more physical. And like that, because of my meditation practice, I know feels very aligned and like what I want to work towards, versus being like, am I doing this because I'm just like giving up, or because I'm scared, whatever it is. And so I think that, like you said, like knowing surrender is really about like understanding that there's more possibilities out there than what you could ever even imagine or dream of. And that's what's like trusting that bigger, greater, higher power. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I just want to know your opinion on why we're like this. It's the age-old nature versus nurture, but like I look at our dogs, for instance. Seems like a trivial example, but like, someone will show up at the door, they'll go crazy and bark, and then they go back to their bed, and it's like they've totally forgotten about it. Same with our kids too, right? They don't hold on to these preconceived notions. They're not as self-critical. They're not nearly as controlling. Like, do we just become like this as adults, or is it more of a construct of society? Yeah.
I think that, as one of the things that I talk about often with meditation, part of why you're meditating is because you are having to like shower off. You're having to clean off all the world's projections onto you.
Yeah.
And as children, one of the things that like, which is why so much work is done on like the developmental ages of children, is because like your mind and your subconscious mind, right? Because again, so our subconscious mind, just for, I'm sure a lot of you know this, but for those who don't, it's a collection of anything you've ever experienced, right? Mm-hmm. Anything you've ever thought, anything you've ever watched, anything you've ever read, anything that you've dreamt, like trauma, depending on how woo-woo you want to go, your ancestor stuff, like, all of that, right? So as we get older, there's more and more in there, right? You can even talk about Akashic records, right? So it's a similar thing. It's like it all goes into this area that becomes more and more used. So depending on what is penetrating into that field, you have to sort of clean off more. And what happens, which I think is hard, and as a parent of a 2-year-old, and as you guys know, you watch them and you want to control, right? You want to tell them that they can't do this and they can do that, but really that's part of why we become the way that we are, because we're not allowed to just be wild, right? We're not allowed to be these feral beings like other animals are. And so we're told this is wrong, this is right. And for some people, this is wrong, this is right is true. But for other people, it's a social construct, what's right and what's wrong, right? And so when we, like, just even the idea, this is gonna sound silly, but like wearing pants, like,
No, we're dealing with that right now.
so am I. Someone likes to be al fresco.
Yeah.
I'm much more okay with that.
Yeah,
But
I know that he's going to preschool in September,
Yeah,
and like you can't just take off your pants, buddy, and like run around.
We probably balance each other well.
But that's the thing, though. But the thing becomes that, right? Is like, this is going to sound like really out there, but like, who's to say it's not okay to be naked, right? Like, that's the whole idea. And so like, that's something that's just so simple. It's like, okay, well, you're dealing with other people. There's a lot of things that you have to think about, and there is societal rules that we all believe in.
Right.
But that's part of why we're constantly in this like non-alignment with ourselves, because these social constructs happen and you're like, well, is that true and aligned for me? Like, do I actually have to believe that, or can I be on this other path? And like, all of the innovators that have done everything in the world are off on some level.
They're perceived as crazy at first.
Right.
Yeah, meaning that like they're not in that normalness. And so they're able to sort of fight off the boxes that the world puts us in.
Yeah.
And I think that as conscious beings who are in this space right now, as we parent, the hope is that we are able to allow them to be as much themselves without hurting anyone, without getting themselves in trouble, without any of these things, where you find that like very, very nuanced balance between, you know, the like gentle parenting, but also the letting them know like, no, you can't hit, and like, you can't do these things because you're harming someone else. And so our whole life, we're being told how we're supposed to be, Chad. And that really confuses us, especially if you're in a family that's telling you how you're supposed to be, right? Like, we're all doctors, so now you're all supposed to be a doctor. And it's like, you know, my dad's a businessman, and like, my mind is very business. I'm very good at business, which is why a lot of people hire me to do the business stuff for them, right? But I was a business major and I switched to philosophy in college, and my dad like nearly lost his mind. And he was like, what are you going to do? Sit on a corner and question life? And it's like, yeah, maybe a little bit. Right. And so I was able to sort of retain myself a bit so that I had more room to be me, and I had more room. And I was very, very privileged that I had the ability to be a little bit more off the beaten path than like my brother was, you know? And like, we're coming from that same family, but we're two completely different humans, right? And I think that I, at a very early age, like my mom said from a young age, I was like doing weird things with crystals that she had no idea where I learned. And I would like put them by like the moonlight and the sunlight. And she's like, I didn't know where you were doing this, but like that was something I was doing from a very early age. And I think that that's why I do this work, because I was aware of the fact that like, we don't have to do it the way the world tells us to do it.
Yeah.
And I think the more that we know that, the more like feral we can be in that sense, the more we can just be on our path, and then we're not fighting that as much. Does that help?
Yeah. It's something I think about every day when we raise our kids. There are like rules and constructs, but I really want them to be their own person and try and fail and, you know, be free and wild. It's like, it's a lot harder when you grow up, you know, all these things.
I think that's when I think about, you know, my disordered relationship with food and my disordered relationship with my body, I'm not going to say the whole, but a big part of that came from that exact construct, that like society or whoever it was, like magazines, we didn't really have social media at the time, but like those types of things were informing me of like, this is the way that like a successful person looks. And this is the way that like a loved person looks. And like, you are going to be more popular if you look this way. This is how you should, like, quote unquote, should look. And so that was a big reason for me to like constantly be striving to be thinner for a very long time. Do you feel like you had that same experience because I'm guessing your disordered eating kind of started before you were.
Yeah. So mine was in college, and it was really bad. I was like almost hospitalized. I'm 5'7.5". I was 85 pounds. So it wasn't just like a little calm food relationship. And mine was, I didn't eat. And I worked out like 8 hours a day, and I thought I was fat, and like all of that stuff was happening for me. And, you know, it was interesting because one of the things that my psychiatrist said at the time, because I had to see one when I was with my parents, is he said, this isn't because she wants to control anything. This is because she's incredibly vain. And that is actually a big part of it. And I think that like, that's one of the things that's true, is that like eating is often because we're trying to control things, and that's where a lot of people get that way. Mm-hmm. And because of the pressure that society puts on us to look a certain way. And I was a redhead at a time where it wasn't that cool to be a redhead. Right now it's pretty cool to be a redhead, but back then it really wasn't. And so I was going to do anything I can to fit into what society deemed attractive. Right. And at that time it was like heroin chic, and it was like super like non-carby, straight as can be. And so that's where I went. And so like, while we laughed at the fact that he said I was vain, he was right. Like, it was just not, I mean, I guess vain isn't the total right word, but it was, for me, it wasn't a deeper thing for me to control life. It wasn't that like something else happened to me. It was literally me just trying to be attractive for the world. Right. And that's what I was trying for. And I think that social media is such a tricky thing right now. And there are things that like, one thing that's like can be positive about social media is that you can change your algorithm like that. Mm-hmm. Right. And people don't realize that. And so like when people are dealing with disordered eating and stuff, one of the things, and that's not my specialty by any stretch, but if one of my clients is talking a little bit about not liking her body, which so many women have that feeling, it's like, clean up your feed. Find women who, and I do this for myself too, because one of the things, like you keep on saying like you healed or you fixed your eating disorder, I would say that as someone who has been dealing with this for years and years, like I don't know that it's ever completely fixed. I don't think that my eating disorder is fixed, but my disordered eating is not, right? And my disordered relationship with food and my body, it ebbs and it flows. And it depends on what's happening at the time. And one of the things when I see myself in a more restrictive place and I see myself going back to that, one of the things I will do is I'll go on my feed and I will find women who have bodies that are bigger than what my feed might look like at one point, and see them and find their joy and watch them love their body and notice that like, wait a minute, like, there is just one part of the population that's telling you that your body needs to look like that. But there are so many millions of women out there who are not a size 0, who are amazing and confident and look fantastic. And it's like, so let me start putting my algorithm towards those women so that I can remember that like curves are beautiful, being a woman is beautiful, and have it be that. And I think like that's one of the things that we have more power over social media than we realize, because you can change your algorithm by changing the people that you follow. And that's hard. It's not, you know, we're so accustomed to not doing it that way. But the way our subconscious mind works is that it's always taking input from all the things that are around us. And so if we're constantly putting in the input that back in the day, you had no choice. If the magazines just had a size 0, then there was no way for you to find size 0s, not bigger than size 0s, looking good, right to you. But now, one of the good things about social media is you actually can find that. The magazines become somewhat less relevant, and instead you can fill it with things that you feel more aligned with. And you can find women who, like, I notice when I'm feeling in the way of myself, when I go around, I literally look around to find women who feel good in their bodies. And I just want to like notice them and like feel them for a second and take on that energy for a second and recognize how many different shapes and sizes they can come in. Because there's some beautiful ones who are naturally size 2 and that's okay, or naturally size 0. Like that's okay. Like it's okay to be very thin too, as long as you're not harming yourself to do it, right? But like I notice and will constantly be looking around for all the women who feel like, to me, when I see them, they feel like they feel good in their skin. And then I'm like, okay, that's what I want for myself. And then that becomes a possibility for me. I don't ever wish to be thinner anymore. I wish to be in a place where I'm comfortable in my body.
It's about the feeling, just like you said, with work and like purpose. It's not about the tangible, like success outcome, right? It's about how you feel. And I think that that's like a common thread through all of this. But the social media thing is really something that I think anyone can take away. I know that when I was going through all of it, like one of the very first things that I did, and it's like, it's nothing against the people that you're following, but like one of the very first things that I did was like I was following all these Victoria's Secret models at the time, because the Victoria's Secret fashion show was such a big thing. And like I literally had to go through and just unfollow all of those people, because again, it's nothing about them. They're probably like the most beautiful, nice, most fabulous people, but some of them
might not be. Like who knows? We
don't know. Seeing their images like wasn't making me feel good about myself or about my body. And so it's like, okay, well, seeing what will, and like filling your life and yourself up with that. So.
Yeah. And in general, I think in social media, it's making sure your feed makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Right. And also looking at me and you've had this conversation too. Like, so if you want to go back to career stuff, which I think is really powerful, it's also knowing that like, are there people who you're looking at on your field that trigger you? Right. Let's say for career wise. Right. And like one of those things would be like, okay, like, are they triggering me because they're more successful than me? Then like, what is it that I like about what they're talking about? And then how can I learn more about that so that like I can feel as knowledgeable as them?
Confident.
So you can use that as a way to go deeper into the things that you're into and to learn more. And so therefore that person and their success might actually not be someone you want to remove from your field, because it actually is inspiring you to do more, to like get out there more, to challenge yourself more, as opposed to like making sure your feed doesn't challenge you as all. You don't want that either. Like it's okay to be challenged by things out there, because that often is what gives you the energy to keep on leveling up over and over and over again. I say like whatever, like when Will, like my husband and I like bought this house that we weren't necessarily like, we live in the city, but we got a weekend house, and like it became a project of love that turned out a lot more expensive than ever. But it was one of the greatest things. Like, no, we didn't plan on doing it, but it leveled me up because it made me want to be able to be someone who can be in that house and afford that house. So I kept on taking chances in my career and living on my edge and not getting comfortable, so that I can be at that place. You know, and I think that we should always be on our edge. I don't believe that we should like be coasting. I think on your edge is where you are able to grow so much, where you're able to create something that you didn't even know was possible. The difference is knowing that me attaining that thing is not where my joy comes. My joy comes from the journey of attaining that thing. And so as I go after that thing, that next level in my career, or whatever that is, that I am enjoying the journey. And I don't think that it's like, once I make this amount of money, or once I have this many people, or once I have this many that's not where that feeling comes from. It's out of how I can find it every single day on the journey to that destination. Because knowing that every time I reach a destination, I'm going to have a new one. And like some people say that's not okay because it means that you keep on hustling. And that's not true. It means that you keep on going to that next thing because you've arrived there and now you have a different perspective. I have a different view. So I didn't see all these other things I could have had as possibilities before because I was over here. But now that I'm over here, I'm like, oh, okay, great. But again, as long as I don't think getting here higher, because they're not seeing me, I'm reaching to something higher, would be the thing that gets me happy. It's okay, like how can I join the journey to know that there's another peak I want to reach? Right. And I think that that's okay to continuously want to reach more and more peaks.
Yeah, I agree. It's challenging. Society teaches you everything opposite of that, right? It's very like well constructed, or I don't mean society necessarily, but let's say like traditional education and entering the workforce and like what the goals are. it's just, I think you have to be very, very conscious of it.
Human beings are very like we thrive in comfort, right? Like I see it a lot in my clients where it's like, you know, we think we thrive in comfort.
I was going to say, we definitely don't.
We don't thrive in comfort, but we think we do. We're like, oh, I don't want to try this new diet, or I don't want to
Just risk aversion.
interview for this new job, because it's like I'm very comfortable here. And so it's like,
and it's not comfortable, it's just familiar. And
familiar.
So the way the subconscious mind works is that it wants to know what's already happened, because again, it's that sense of control, right? It's that sense of control. Like, I've already made it this far, and so I don't want to have anything new come, because like I'm stable here. Right? Yeah. Like I feel I'm safe here. But the truth is that that's why so many live such miserable lives, because they're confusing familiar with comfortable.
Comfortable, right.
Because it's actually incredibly uncomfortable. Right? And then that taking those next steps, that discomfort is what they think is uncomfortable, but that actually is what leads to
what you want.
Right. What you desire. And like, you can't, I think very much that the difference between successful people and not successful people is that successful people keep going, and they keep on reinventing themselves, and they keep on trying again, and they don't give up because one thing doesn't work. Right. Mm-hmm. And they might spend more time. Like, one of the things, again, like, there's such rhetoric around, manifestation, but the fact that like you get to like sit on your meditation pillow and like it all comes through, and we're all promised whatever it is that we want. You and I talk about this all the time. Like, if you have a deep desire for something, I'm in full-fledged belief that you don't have that desire unless it's a possibility for you. Right. Now, does that mean it's guaranteed for you? Absolutely not. You don't get to just sit on your meditation pillow and like be in the desire. You don't get to just look at the vision board. You get to sit on your meditation, be in the desire, look at your vision board, and then take earthly actions that are guided by that trust and surrender of knowing that you can get there, right? And allowing it to look however it needs to look.
Can you give a tangible example of that? Because I am like thinking about how this may apply to my life, but like for somebody who's thinking about like wanting to manifest something, like, or you having done that in your own life.
So I've told this story a few times. So when I was first coaching, right, I was renting rooms, like this was like pre-2020. So like I did a lot of stuff in person, right? And I was like renting rooms by the hour and then by the day. And I've had these crystals that ironically are from my parents, and they're huge, right? They're not in here, but they're like even bigger than some of the ones you see behind me.
I know the type.
And I would have these visions in my meditation, right, where they were in my office. And so back in the day, I was like taking a meditation pillow with me. I had a bag of crystals with me, and I'd be going to the office, like walking in the city with it all the time, right? Because I didn't have a permanent space, so I couldn't leave them there, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'd be sitting in my meditation, and I would see this new office that was happening, and these crystals that were huge were there from my childhood that are in my apartment now. And I'm like, well, how is that even possible? Like, there's no way they'd be there. There's no way I'm schlepping those crystals to an office every day, right? Like, that would be too heavy. And so I kept on seeing them go into my meditation. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm looking for an office, right, for a full 2 days, and maybe I'd bring it there, so it'd be there for 2 days. And I would sit in my meditation, and I would go, and I live on Fifth Avenue, and so if you go outside my building, if you go to the right, you're going downtown. If you go to the left, you're going uptown. And I kept on seeing myself going left outside my office to work, and I'd arrive someplace, and you would see these big crystals. I'm like, well, I don't really want to. That would be nomad, and I thought my office should be in Soho. And I kept on going in these meditations. I kept on being in this meditation, and I'm like, okay. And I was looking for offices at the space so I can, at that time, so I can have like a few days in a row there, so I can put these crystals there. And what wound up happening was I was looking, and then I'm on like I'm on an air flight on a plane to LA, and I'm on like the 5th page of Google looking for office spaces. And it's on 20th Street, which would be me making a left out of my apartment. Mm-hmm. I never would have even looked at 20th Street. And then I'm like, oh, I make a left. I walk in there. I go into the room that they have open. This was like a week later. I open up the door. I'm like, holy shit, this is the size. This is the ceiling height. This is the room I've been in a million times in my meditation before. Now, I was not ready to have a full-time space. This space was a year lease. And I wasn't at all in the place in my career that I should do that. And what I wound up doing was like just looking at it, and I literally turned to her, I'm like, I'll take it. And it was one of those things that was complete manifestation, because like I followed the cues in my meditation that told me to go left, that told me my crystals needed to sit someplace, right? That I couldn't carry them around anymore. And I remember my parents came, and I did the office, and my parents came, and my mom's first reaction is, it's beautiful. Like maybe you can find someone to share the rent with. You can split it day to day, few days a week, them, few days a week, you. And then my dad comes in and he looks at it and he goes, it's beautiful. You're going to outgrow it in 6 months. You're going to need a bigger office. Right? So I had two different perspectives being shown to me, and my dad was right. Within 6 months, I grew and I went into an office that was over double the space in the same building, and my crystals were there. And so I think that that is a good example of like how you allow those messages to take you on steps that I wouldn't have taken, because I never would have gone left. I was convinced I had to be right. But that's, again, that's surrender and attachment. Right? Like I thought my office had to be downtown further. I thought it had to be in Soho for whatever reason. Right? And I surrendered to it, being like, oh, I guess I could make a left. And the left was only 5 blocks from my apartment, right? So it actually was much more convenient than Soho would have ever been for me.
And I think you manifested the office, but the bigger manifestation is what your dad said, is that you outgrew it and you got that many clients.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
Like that's
yeah. And I think though that's also the perspective stuff, right? So if I went into that office thinking I better outgrow this in 6 months, I probably wouldn't have outgrown it in 6 months, right? Because I would have felt constricted, because I would have been tied to like a very clear, detailed outline of what something needed to look like. And instead, I had these two very different possibilities in front of me. And that gave me the freedom to be like, let's see. Yeah. Let's see, right? But I'm going to keep on showing up, and I'm going to love this office, and I'm not going to be worried about outgrowing it. And I'm also not going to be worried about having to share it. I'm okay with either outcome, but I'm going to continue to work showing up as me more and more and more and more and more. And in that was where I was able to do it. So I think that's actually a perfect example of like what that surrender looks like. I heard a version of this and I tweak it a little bit. You might have heard the analogy of manifestation is like when you order something from Amazon and you know it's on your way, right? And like, I don't quite think of it that way, because it's not a direct order. You don't exactly know what that thing is. I think that when you attach too much to the exact outcome, you cut off so many bigger possibilities out there for yourself. And you feel constricted, you feel tied to an outcome. And I think when we're tied to an outcome, it really does shut off so much of our creative availability and so much of the pleasure in the journey of being like, I don't know, like, I know that I'm in it. I know that I'm going to keep on being guided. I know I'm going to show up. I know I'm going to take steps that are uncomfortable. I know I'll keep on doing it. And like, what's going to happen? And like, how cool could that be? Right? To just allow it to be something. And one way I think about it too is like, it's the way you think about like, let's say your love for Chad, right? You know it's there. You spend time with it every day and you nurture it without consistently thinking, how do I love Chad? It's just something that is. And it doesn't have to be tied to exact details of what that means and how you have to show up for it. But you know that you show up as a vessel for that all day, every day. But you're not thinking all day, every day, I'm a vessel for Chad's love, right? And I think that like, if manifestation is that same thing, it's like, I'm a vessel for this thing that I want to create. And I know it's possible. I know there's something beautiful out there. And I'm going to show up as the version of me that, I talk about this with future self all the time. It's like, I'm going to show up with the version of me that believes I am a loving vessel for Chad. I am someone who has an incredible wellness career. I'm going to show up as that person, and I'm going to make moves that that person would make before I'm ready, before I'm them, and that will lead to it. I wasn't ready is an example of that.
Right. One of the things that you talk about all the time is that concept of future self, right? And like using that as a way to get you out of that comfort zone that you're so used to. So I go back to like, I think about my own clients, and it's like, I don't want to start eating, a Whole Foods diet. I don't want to start working out, like, cause it's comfortable and I'm used to that. And, or like, whatever it is, that the thing that you don't want to do. And so how can people connect to the future version of themselves that they want to become in order to take the action step of doing the thing that's uncomfortable, whether that's doing a workout or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that actually, I love when we talk about it, even just with the clear concept of having your body feel better, whether that means smaller or not smaller, it just means more comfortable in the body, whatever that looks like for someone, and healthier. And it's like, so they're going to have to make changes. They're going to have to make drastic changes, and they're going to have to make changes that make them show up for themselves all the time. And that can either feel really, really restrictive, or it can feel really, really expansive. And when you're tapping into future self, which is, well, why am I doing this work? Why did I sign up to work with Kelly, right? Why do I want to be a coach? Whatever the thing is. And it's like, if I tap into what is it that I think I'm going to feel like at the end of 6 months with Kelly, right? What am I going to feel like when I have that wellness career, right? What am I going to feel like? What is that going to be like? How am I going to show up in the world? What choices does that version of me make? Right. How does she hold herself? How does she speak to herself? How does she decide what's important, what's not important? And when I tap into that version of me, it accelerates the process of me getting there, because I'm already making choices as her. And as I make those choices, I tap into that end line. We did a whole thing, if you remember, on Shift on like goal setting. And one of the most important things with goal setting is understanding that there are going to be times that you don't want to show up for the thing that you want to show up for. And how to give yourself energy around that is not dwelling on the thing that you don't want to show up for, but dwelling on the feeling of what it'll be like after you showed up for it. Right? When it's complete. And you use that. So with future self, it's like, if I'm someone who really wants to feel better in my body, right? And I'm working out with you, I already have an idea of what I feel like that will feel like, right? I have, whether it be from expansive versions on Instagram or TV, or even previous versions of myself, like I have an idea of what I think healthier me will feel like.
Right.
And every time I'm trying to make choices, I want to ask myself, does this align with that feeling or a different feeling? And I want to keep on making choices that align with the version of me that I know it can feel like. And I think like that's how your journey becomes really beautiful instead of destination based, because you're tapping into it every day with choices that you're making. And so those choices don't feel restrictive, they feel expansive, because as I make those choices, I'm spending time with the version of me that has the outcome I want. And so I'm getting to experience it the entire way, as opposed to waiting for the destination to happen.
Yeah. I could not agree with that more. I think that goes back to the discomfort thing. So I think that's super helpful.
It's a lot of self-reflection too. You have to be constantly evaluating why you're making the choices you are. There's a lot of noise from everywhere that's going to potentially lead you in a different direction.
Right.
And that's again where that's where the meditation becomes so important. So you understand like what the noise is, because I don't think that people have to be perfectly disciplined to be successful in creating whatever it is they want to create for themselves. But I do think that most of their choices have to be lined up with the outcome that they want. Yeah. And I think that if you're real, you're going to understand that you're not always going to want to make that choice. And so while people say that discipline is restrictive, it's not. It means that you believe in your outcome. It means that you believe that you can have that thing. And I think that we're often told that like that you don't want to, that you should only feel like yes with everything you do, but it's like that's not true. So your discipline is what helps you through those moments where you don't actually feel like doing it. Right? And the way for that discipline to feel good is as I sit in those choices I need to make, there's a choice that connects to my future me that I want, and there's a choice that doesn't take me there. Right? And so if I can step into the feeling of what it will feel like to attain the thing I want right now, it makes it a lot more comfortable for me to make that choice of discipline. And I'll have to do that because I won't always be motivated, but I'll have to try to find the motivation. And the truth is, especially when you're talking about business stuff, and you know this, Kelly, is that even when you're not motivated, your discipline is the thing that's going to get you to that next step. And even with your eating, or even with your taking care of your body or taking care of your mind, right? It's like I have people who are really struggling with their mind, and like a daily practice is essential. And I understand there's 1,000 reasons for why you can't do it. And I will tell you it is 11 minutes and there is every reason why you can. Even if it's not successful, even if your mind is wandering the entire time and it's incredibly uncomfortable, you need to be able to sit with yourself so that you can get clear. And as you go on and on, it becomes more comfortable for you to sit with yourself. But you have to be disciplined, because at the beginning, you don't have that pattern yet, and it doesn't feel comfortable, and it's not something you necessarily want to do, and you don't know how it turns out yet. And so there's going to be all these reasons for why you'll tell yourself that you don't have to do it, but you do, because your choices will be what determines your future, 100%. And so I think that people don't often want to realize that, but you can make those choices feel good even though you don't want to do them. There are ways to do that.
I will say, like, until I met you, you know, one of the things that we talked about a couple of years ago, now that it's been that long, was like, I was meditating, but I wasn't consistent. Like, I would do it for 2 weeks, and then I wouldn't do it for a couple of days. And then I would, now it's consistent. It's every day, because I know what happens and how my life feels and how I feel, and like what's possible in my business if I do it every day. And so your specializations, what you teach, is Kundalini and breathwork. Why are those
Just before we go there.
Go.
Is it healthy or possible to have your manifestation or the outcome be like almost purely financial based, in the sense that I just want to get to a place where I have enough financial independence that I can do the things that I want, I can take care of my family, and I can live a life of potential freedom? Like, so I think some people, myself included, struggle with, not saying I'm one of that, that's how I view the world, but is that some people struggle with like identifying their real passion and how that aligns to their career, and they just think of it as more like a financial freedom component. And it's unpopular, I think, to like say that, because like, well, you're not really seeking out your passion if it's just related to.
Well, I think it depends. So like I talk about prosperity a lot, and prosperity people can think is just a financial thing. And it depends. You can have a financial number, like let's call it whatever number it is that you want to get every year, right? So call out a number, call out an easy number.
$1 million.
Okay. So you want to make $1 million a year, right? And you believe that like, that's what's going to give you financial freedom, right? The thing is that if you're just tied to that number becomes irrelevant, because what if you have to work 18 hours a day to do that, right? What if you have to work 7 days a week in order to attain that? All that financial freedom you're talking about doesn't exist, because you can't actually make that money without being near your family. So one of the things that you're thinking about is like, what does that $1 million a year look like to me? What do I believe that freedom is going to come from me making that money? And so at that point, you start to think about, okay, well, I wouldn't want to do it working 7 days a week, right? I wouldn't want to put that much, or maybe I would, but I only want to do it for 3 years, right? There are different ways that you can sort of understand what it is that $1 million is going to represent to you. And you wind up finding ways to have that freedom now, right? Because one of the things that people don't realize is that part of what you want with that financial freedom is time. Right? And so what you wind up doing instead is being like, okay, like what is worth my time? I think about all the time when I'm making choices about, because I have an expensive life, I'm not going to lie, right? And I think about my finances, and I work, and I do very, very well. And I also sometimes have to think like, is it worth for me to take that on? My time? Do I want to give up that much time in order to acquire that much? Right? And I have to always ask myself that, because time and is a commodity that you can't buy, right? You can't get more of it, right? And so I think that you think about what you think that $1 million is going to get for you, and you start to look for it now. And then when you're in your career, you still get to look for that $1 million, but you understand that if it completely detracts from the things that you think it's going to get you, then you need to find that $1 million a different way.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that that's sometimes how you can find your passion, because you're like, well, I don't mind working, but I don't want to be doing it in this particular way. It's like, okay, so then what are other ways I can make that money that still allows me to have freedom? One thing on the caveat I will say to that is that this idea that a lot of people are selling is that you don't have to work to make money. I don't believe that. I believe that it's okay to work to earn money. I believe that like we're not all supposed to work 1 hour days and think that we have endless money coming our ways. Like we should show up for it. Like there is an earned value in the way that you do. I certainly show up a ton for my career, but I also really enjoy doing what I'm doing. And so I think you find that balance and you make sure that they're tied together, that whatever you're doing to get that $1 million also has at least some kind of resemblance of what you believe having that $1 million will do for you.
Yeah. That's a helpful construct to think about. Because I think probably a lot of people struggle with it, candidly.
Yeah.
Or they don't necessarily have these ethereal beliefs on like what their passion is, and they just like view it as like financial freedom. And so I think connecting the dots is important.
Yeah. And I think that's really important, because I think that if you just tie it to a number, and I have a lot of, I see a lot of husbands,
I'm sure, yeah.
and a lot of times, this question is often asked. And like, what I will tell you, if they don't want to do the work and change it, is that they hit their goals, they always do, but then their goal rises, right? And then they want more and more, because if the goal is just the number, then the goal will keep on rising and there will be no satisfaction at the end, because it's just, it's not a better experience, right? And so the reason why you want the million is because you want a different experience on earth. And so you have to tie how you can find that along the way. And then finding your passion can also just be like, what job is conducive to me? Because I also want money because it buys me things, right? We're not going to deny that there are things that can be bought with money. And so it's like, okay, like what are things that I'm naturally good at? What are things that I enjoy doing that I can get really skilled at that can help me attain that number? And it also feels good.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the ultimate, thing. And something you have to keep on working at. It's not like a simple, I have it and then it's done.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's go back. So one of the question that we were talking about was this idea of like, for you and the way that you teach, it's Kundalini meditation.
It's some Kundalini, it's Reiki, it's a lot of, it kind of ebbs and moves. And I think that ultimately what it is subconscious based, right? So we're always going to work on the subconscious level. So that means we do a lot of self-hypnosis. We do a lot of Reiki and breath work and Kundalini, which is going to use mantra. And all of those help to penetrate the subconscious mind so that you can have more help and access to different possibilities than your patterns and your habits that are already there. And so that's kind of why we use all of those different modalities in order to hit that subconscious level. Because again, 90% of our actions are going to come from that. Like if you put in to your subconscious mind into a deep pattern of like, I can live a life as a wellness person doing this and enjoying my life and creating good things and having change. And one of the things that when you're trying to create something is making sure that it's not only good for you, but the people who you serve leave better too. Right. And that's when you'll be on the right path. Like you knew you were on the right path with your sister because you both had the same thing. You both wanted it. And I really believe that you're doing the right thing when you feel great and all the people around you feel great. And like they should coexist together when you're in alignment with what you're here to do. Because when we are being us and we're here to do the thing that we're doing and we're doing it, we give all the people around us permission to do that for themselves. And you showing up as you allows someone to step into a better version of themselves. Like everyone will say who works with me is like, they become the best version of themselves because they work with me. And that's partially because I'm becoming the best version of myself as I work with all of them. So like I'm able to help them see theirs, right? And that's all part of it. And we all have that. We all have innate gifts as to why we're here. And the more we align with them, the more we feel good, and everyone we interact with in this butterfly effect feels good as well. Right.
I was wondering, like, do you think that the Kundalini meditation, it show, I mean, I know I've been doing it for a couple of years now, but like, do you think that it shows us like why we're doing the old pattern of behavior in the first place? Or is it just a catalyst for us to change that pattern of behavior?
That's a very loaded question. Kundalini will often talk about the fact that the past is irrelevant. The reason for why we're doing the thing means nothing. It really means nothing. And again, within the world right now that's like very addicted to the trauma loop and like blaming our parents and our childhood for everything that's ever happened to us, wants to say that we should dig into that. Part of why I'm different than therapy is like, I don't know that we need to dig into it because again, perspective changes, our memory changes, our subconscious mind changes because more comes in, more perspective happens. So when we look back, especially like when you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, like you don't remember what it was when you were 5. I don't care what you said. You do not remember. Your mind was completely different. It didn't work. the same. You didn't have a prefrontal cortex back then.
Right.
Right. And so like, you know, Porter can tell me when he's 30 that he didn't like what I did to him when he was 2, but he has no recollection, not a real recollection, right? It's going to be a perceived thing that often can be implanted by someone else talking to him.
Yeah.
So that whole why and that whole history thing is super tricky. It's not to say that you shouldn't think about maybe like some of your history and maybe why it made you who you are. But that's not where the healing is going to happen. You don't have to understand why. You have to understand like what your shit is, and now how can I do it differently? One of my teachers had this beautiful, I wish it was mine, but it was his. And he said, because I was like, we were talking about the idea of, oh my God, I'm forgetting the word, spiritual, what is it when we talk about like spiritual bypass, right? And he's like, you can't spiritual bypass, Jamie. He's like, it's spiritual. He's like, you can't bypass it. He's like,
Right.
because your subconscious mind rules everything. He's like, so just the premise in and of itself doesn't make sense. He's like, but let's just take this example. He's like, you're driving down the road. He's like, and you run over a nail, right? And you get a flat tire. He's like, do you need to figure out where the nail came from, or do you just need to patch it so you can go forward? He's like, what's going to get you to your destination quicker? And I was like, well, maybe you don't want to go over that road again because that road has nails. He's like, but you could go over that road again and it might not have nails anymore because you already picked that nail up. He's like, so revisiting that space most likely does not take you where you want to go.
Yeah.
He's like, but focusing on where you want to go is what's going to take you where you want to go.
Really
He's like,
good
and so if I want to go forward and I have a flat tire, I just have to figure out how to fix that flat tire.
Yeah.
I don't have to figure out how the tire got flat.
Yeah. I
Right?
love that. That's really great.
And I think that that's really important. I think it's tricky because again, like there's so much about everything is trauma and all that. And like, I just don't agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think
It's
that's
so
really
powerful.
important.
Yeah. I think that we do spend as a society a lot of time like trying to figure out. I mean, Chad and I talk about it all
I
the
wouldn't
time
define
in
by the
our
past
relationship. Yeah.
Or their conscious mind points them in that direction.
Or I'll even
Fear of
say
failure, I
like
guess.
when, you know, like if he was to like say something to me like in an argument and I like get really either like defensive or I just shut down. I'm like, well, this is why I do that. And this is why, but it's like, does that helpful in our argument?
No,
Like,
and the helpful thing is actually for you to actually say in this moment, oh my God, like, I think I'm doing that because when I was younger, maybe you can have this moment, like, I felt like no one listened to me, but you do listen to me. And so I actually shouldn't say that. And I shouldn't act like that with you because
You
that's
do
not
listen.
actually what's happening.
Yeah, right. In the heat of the moment, that'll never happen. But maybe 5 minutes after.
But again, so again, like the whole reason why we meditate so much too is that we have a self-awareness. So when
Even
know
when-
when a
yeah.
trigger comes on, you know when you're in reactionary. So the whole idea is that you have 2 choices always in
Right.
life.
Yeah.
You're either, no, not 2 choices. There are 2 ways to go. You're either in a reactionary pattern, which means you're coming from your subconscious mind, or you're in choice, which means you're coming from your conscious mind.
Proactive.
And
yeah.
we know the difference. Like you have a moment, especially when you start doing this work more and more, you're like, oh, this is a reaction I'm having. So what I can do, especially if I have a daily practice, one of the most beautiful things about having a daily practice is I can just do a tiny bit. So let's say it's Kirtan Kriya for you. I can just go like this, right? With my hands, which means I'm touching my fingers, which is what you would do for Kirtan Kriya. My subconscious mind is going to be like, oh, that means it's time to relax. That means I'm okay. That means it's calm. I can get to that place. I can take a breath and I can say like, oh, this is actually what's happening right now.
Right.
Let me choose differently as opposed to being in reaction. And I think that that's really, really important to do. And I think that you get better and better at it. Not to say you don't have moments, not to say that you're always going to be able to control it, but like that's a lot of why we do this work so that we can understand when I'm coming from an old pattern, when I'm coming from an old story, or when I'm coming from now. And usually if I'm coming from now, then I'm not as mad about the thing that's happening.
Right.
Because I realize it doesn't mean all these other things.
Right. It doesn't mean all the things that you're triggered about.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful. I think that like, yeah, getting yourself back into the present moment when you do feel that trigger is key. Like you talk about like all these different breath works and all of this different stuff that we do every time that we meet, you know, in our group. And so if anyone is looking for like those types of tools, I highly recommend joining Jamie's program. Like like I said, there's nothing better than I've ever done. One of the last things that I wanted to touch on was the idea of us potentially, not potentially, we're doing something together this summer. And knowing that Jamie and I kind of both came from this background of having, not necessarily the best relationships with our body and with movement and with our mindset. And that's what we do now, is we teach women how to have a better relationship with those things. And so that's what we want to do this summer going into it, knowing that there is so much pressure on women to lose weight around the summer or to, be thinner, whatever it is going into this time. And so I just wanted to see if you have any thoughts that you wanted to share on that.
Well, my first thing I want to share is it's a perfect example for everyone to know that Kelly and I have never done this before. So we're both very uncomfortable about it.
Yes,
right?
we are.
We both are very much on our edge in the idea that we're going to do this together. But what we're going to lean into is the feeling of knowing of how much we can help the women who are going to do it,
right,
and how good it's going to feel when we see people having a better experience with their body, when they have a better relationship with the mirror, when they are actually enjoying being them as opposed to trying to restrict so that they can get in a bikini for their vacation.
Right.
And that's what we're going to lean into to get ourselves to get this thing started. Right. Yeah. Because if we did it by fear, we'd be like, you know what, maybe it's not the right time. Maybe we won't do it. That would be a fear-based decision. But we're going to lean into understanding how beautiful and how helpful it'll be. Because I will tell you that the two things that have changed my life so much with my relationship with my body would be my mindset and learning that I don't have to be at the gym 8 hours
all the time.
And that I can actually use movement, and Kelly does so beautiful with this, as a way to nourish my body, as a way for it to actually feel good. When you do her workouts, it feels expansive. It feels like I'm getting breath into my body. It feels like I'm making it stronger and not trying to make it go away. And a lot of that has to do with mindset, and a lot of that has to do with the actual physical movements. And so when we were on a call recently, we're like, what if?
Yeah.
And so our what if is going to become we will. Yeah. And you can join us. But we don't have the details yet.
We're really excited. It's going to be throughout this summer. And we're going to give you guys more details, but it's really going to be us having conversation around what limiting beliefs you may have, how to start to shift out of those, switch your perspective. And then like Jamie said, using mindset, using meditation, using movement as a way to feel good. For example, I think that a lot of people have this limiting belief, if I don't go to the gym for an hour, then it doesn't count. Those are the types of things that we're going to be allowing you to shift your perspective on. Or if I'm not super sweaty, or if I eat these foods, these are bad foods. We're going to dive into all of that. So we're really excited to help you guys to feel better in your body going.
And know that there are ways that you can allow yourself to feel better and look better physically that don't have to be punishment. They can actually be completely nourishing to your mind, to your body, to your soul. And so this will be an actual really fun, exciting way to get yourself feeling and looking good during the summer. And that's why we're doing it.
We're really excited. Chad asked if it's going to be in person. Well, Jamie's in New York and I'm here. So
and hopefully we're traveling around all summer.
And I think
they have these things. They're called airplanes. You get on them, and then you do things together.
Well, we are planning to do something in person too. So stay tuned.
We're going to be a little bit more about. Yeah.
Stay tuned for all of it. There's going to be some really cool stuff. But no, we know that a lot of people are travel. Most of the clients that we work with travel throughout the summer, and so this is going to be a program where you can really do it anytime, anywhere.
Yes. Exactly. And it'll be on record, so you can literally watch it all the time. And it's really just going to be conducive. It's going to be something that is easy for you. Not that you have to show up for it, because nothing you do that's going to change you isn't going to require you to show up, but you're going to get to show up in a time that works for you. It'll be live, but it'll also be put on a portal afterwards, and it'll be just once a week, and then you'll have homework to do, and it'll be fun, and it'll be uplifting, and it'll be exciting, and you'll look forward to it. I promise.
Yes. Awesome.
All right, Miss Jamie, where can everybody find you? Tell us about your website, your Instagram, your program. Give us all the details.
Okay, so I have organicallyjamie.com. And that is my website where you'll find everything. My Instagram is @organicallyjamie. And you see all of my programs there. We actually are about to launch a business program, which is going to be very, very limited. It's going to be 15 people. And we're just now actually getting that all together, which I'm super excited about because I don't take private clients anymore. And this is a way for you to get really, really private attention because there's only 15 people and it's a 5-month program. And we're going to have the details coming about that soon. So you can get on the wait list for that. And doing Kelly's program and then some other exciting things, which you'll see because we'll let you know about them.
Yes.
I love it.
Kelly and I are going to really have some exciting things for everyone coming up soon.
We cannot wait. Thank you so much, Jamie. Thank you for your time. I know you're a busy lady. This was really, really amazing. So we appreciate you and we love you. And I will see you on Monday.
Thank you for having me. Bye, guys.
Bye.
We really hope that you enjoyed that episode. You can follow me on Instagram @wellnessbykelly. And if you're new around here, you can sign up for the WBK 7-day free trial where you can get access to all of my low impact workouts, blood sugar balancing, plant-based recipes, and guided meditations, all available on wellnessbykelly.com and on the WBK app.
Hey, thanks for listening.
Please make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also connect with us on social media @wellnessbykelly. Drop us a DM for who you want to hear from.